computer. This is data.
I'm an android. I'm
Cranjis McBasketball.
I was processing all of the information.
processing.
He's one of those idiots who believe in analytics.
Cranjis McBasketball.
Analytics was crap.
Does not compute.
Just because you got good stats doesn't mean you're a good team.
Hello, and welcome back to the Lakers Exceptionalism podcast. My name is Tom Z, joined as always by Tim, a.k.a. Cranjis McBasketball. And Tim, today we are going to hop into a little brief World Cupdate and then dive straight into the biggest threats to the Lakers in the West. But before we get started, man, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Tom. I having a good day. I ordered a fake engagement ring, which is fun. I got a haircut.
Wait. You can't just a fake one?
Yeah, so
Playing a prank on your fiance?
No. Just so I was, we're going to our honeymoon overseas. Get basically a duplicate one with not a diamond in it, just in case.
Ah, gotcha.
I think it sounds like a good idea. It was like a $30 ring that looks exactly the same as the one that was much, much more.
Gotcha. Glad we cleared that up. Sorry to derail you. I was just curious. That was not something I've heard before, I think.
No problem. But I'm doing well. I've been enjoying the rewatch parties. Those have been a blast. Getting my Lakers fixed that way, and then with these World Cup games, getting more basketball. And I've been watching not just Team USA. I don't know if you've had a chance to see any of these other teams, but there's been some good ball going on.
I've been checking out Georgia. My man Dave Dufour is an assistant coach. He's a podcast host for The Athletic and former coach as well, current coach. So I've been watching them. They got Goga Batadze coming off the bench, but they're a scrappy, hustle team. I've been watching some of them. Been watching some of Germany's games as well. But yeah, man, I'm excited to dive in. We did get a starting lineup change, but it wasn't the one we wanted. We got Josh Hart in for Brandon Ingram. So I guess just starting there, what did you think about the switch? It was always going to be a route, pretty much no matter who they started against Jordan. But Josh Hart played well, and Brandon Ingram played better as well.
Yeah, I thought it made sense. It wasn't what I was expecting to see, but I don't mind it. It gets some extra rebounding, some extra defense in the starting group. You don't necessarily need self-creation with like all of your starting spots, so you don't really lose a whole lot. It's always nice to have that self-creation from Ingram, but he was, in a slump, a little bit out of rhythm. This allowed him to play in a second unit alongside Austin Reaves and Tyrese Halliburton that could set him up well. And I think that second unit just has a bit more flow, a bit more ball movement. And not only did he score better, and I think Ingram had his best game from a shooting standpoint, he also was facilitating a bit. So he found a role on that bench group that worked better for him. Josh Hart, I don't think he shot well, but was rebounding the hell out of the ball, playing some good defense with the starting group. And at a team level, I think it worked just fine.
Yeah, we'll see. They've got a couple games coming up. Interesting format. They have they basically put into another subgroup here in the quarterfinals, to get to the quarterfinals. So they'll play games against Montenegro on Friday at 1:40 a.m. Pacific and Lithuania at 5:40 a.m. Pacific. So we'll keep an eye on that. But just quickly going back to that Jordan game, Reaves, came back down to earth a little bit. I think the stakes were definitely not quite as there. Team USA got off to a 15-2 lead, and they never really let up. So not an excuse or anything, but we did see Austin come back down a little bit because he was ascending with each game, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had noticed that when the games were tighter, his minutes seemed to be up and the reliance of the team on him was up. When you're up by 20 points at the end of the first quarter and about 30 points at halftime and then 40 points at the end of the third, you don't really need to lean on those guys. So it was a game, as we said before, to try stuff out, and they tried something out. And I'll be interested to see, do they decide to stick with this starting lineup change, or do they go back to what they did before? But I don't know. It was okay. I don't like mind it. You won by about 50. That's what matters. And Austin, a little bit less involved, certainly less involved as a facilitator, and was turning the ball over a little bit. This was from a like points per scoring possession standpoint, this was his worst game of the tournament, really his only inefficient game of the tournament in the showcase games thus far. 3 for 6 shooting. 6.
So inefficient. No, 4 turnovers is bad, but yeah.
That's what, like from a shooting efficiency standpoint, he did just fine. 8 points on 6 shots, just fine there. When you throw in the turnovers, then it's a little bit, less appealing overall. Still had 1 steal. That's always nice to see. But, the defensive playmaking down a little bit, facilitation down a little bit. Not a big deal. His minutes were actually still up a good bit. We can see he played more than most other players on the team. There were only, let's see here, he was second in minutes, it looks like. So he still got a good bit of run. Just a little bit of I don't know. I would have expected to see a stat line like this for his like first game, not for the most recent game. But I don't know. Are you concerned about this? Do you think this is a step back for him, or just
no?
I don't know. Blowout game doesn't really matter.
I mean, not that it doesn't matter. I definitely think there's some games where more tape gets out on you because coaches are watching more of these games, and obviously they have the NBA tape. But this is different. They're watching the Team USA context. So you got to expect a little bit of adjustments in teams to kind of coach toward your strengths. And, there was like that clip of the Greece coach, or who, I forget if it was the Greece coach, yelling at Halliburton's in, watch for the hit aheads. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting more familiar with these guys, and, they all can't be winners, man. Like I said, he still shot the ball well. Just 4 turnovers in 19 minutes isn't great.
Yeah, so Steve, they had Steve Kerr's numbers when I'm here. No, they definitely have more tape on these guys. Like Austin's not going to show up, and they'll be like, "Who is this?" Like they know who he is at this point. He's been making guys look like fools, and so yeah, Jordan was a little bit more ready for that. And I don't know, you have a down game here and there.
Yeah,
not a big deal. Not every day is your day. He's been white hot from a shooting standpoint, and he still shot well. So. Not a huge deal. Different lineups that he was in a bit today. I haven't rewatched the film yet, but I need to check that out. This game was on super, super early in the morning. But I guess zooming back out, big picture, we're past that group stage. We're now actually not quite to the knockouts. We're at round 2.
It's like the subgroup stage. It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird because it's not. So there's so instead of 8 groups of 4 teams, now we have 4 groups of 4 teams, and the thing is you don't play everybody. So instead of playing 3 games like they did in the first round, we're only going to play 2 games. So USA does not play Greece again. They are set up quite well, 3-0 going into the group with a really nice point differential. As long as I'm understanding the tiebreakers correctly, USA just needs to win one of these 2 upcoming games, and then they are through to the next stage, which then does get to like a knockout setup. If we look at the screen, let's see here. Let's look at the bracket. It goes to an 8-team knockout, single elimination.
And the fact that they were 3-0 in the previous group stage carries over to this group stage. So they have that extra game up on Montenegro and Greece.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good call out. And I think finishing first in the group should matter because the thing is, Group J that the USA is in, they're going to end up playing against Group I, which is this group up here with Serbia, the Dominican Republic, Italy, and Puerto Rico. I guess I'll just call out some names. Serbia right now, 3-0. They've got Bogdan Bogdanovic, Nikola Jovic on their team for NBA players, and then a bunch of guys who aren't in the NBA. Kat is on the Dominican Republic team, also 3-0. Italy's 2-1. They have Simone Fontecchio, and then Puerto Rico, they're 2-1. USA actually played against them, if you recall, for the first showcase game. We streamed that. Was not close. They don't have any current NBA players, but they've got some former college studs. No one in that group, to me, is really scaring me. So I'm not actually all that worried, I guess, about whether or not USA finishes first or second. I think once they get past like the round of 8 into the final 4, that's when you're going to have to play some tough teams. Because when we look at these other two groups, Slovenia, Germany, and Australia, all in the same group, along with Georgia, and Dave Dufour, I'm gonna
it's a tough
admit
draw,
something.
man.
That is a tough draw, dude.
Yeah, dude.
When you told me he was coaching for Georgia, I kid you not, I thought you meant the University of Georgia. I did not know. I did not know you meant Georgia. I was like, oh damn! I did not know he had the hookup like that. Oh,
that's awesome! Shout out, Dave.
But
Good
still,
job.
yeah. Like coaching for a national team at a stage like that, that's fantastic. They're 2-1. They've been doing some good things. They got a really tough draw though. That is going to be really difficult. You've got Luka, you've got Dennis the Menace, and the rest of the German team. Australia's just really, really good. Lots of synergy. Group L's got Canada, Spain, Brazil, Latvia. So, I mean, there are a lot of good teams in these two groups. I think USA's in a good spot. I think they match up favorably against the two teams they will need to play. They only need to win one of the games. And then whether they're playing Kat or they're playing against Bogdanovic and Jovic in Serbia, I'm not super concerned. I think once you get to the Final Four, it's going to be that game and then the finals that are going to be probably the two most challenging games USA has to play this whole tournament. But it's looking good. I'm feeling good.
I feel confident. I feel like the U.S. got a pretty good draw. All things considered, obviously they're going to be the favorites going in, but they're in a good spot, and I would definitely prefer to keep that going. So stay first in your group. They're going to play Montenegro first, so that'll give them a leg up, and they'll see where the other teams land, and maybe you never know. Maybe you kind of get that already locked in and can have a rest game there as well. But once this group stage is finished, they'll get to knockouts, and then that's where it's going to get really interesting because obviously you're going to get to the better competition, and then it's a one-game thing, right? So it's going to get real fast.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't have a down shooting game. You need to dominate by enough that you can't let some bad shooting luck, make you have to go home. So you got to stay sharp. Just because you're in a good spot doesn't mean you can really let the foot off the gas pedal. You want to play well. I think USA, to me, I would rather draw the Dominican Republic in that first knockout game because these next two games, you're playing you're playing Vucevic and you're playing Valanciunas are basically like the headliner players for the two teams you're about to play. Big man, go play Cat again. Make it 3 in a row. I feel like if you can stylistically from a defensive standpoint, if you do want to implement some tactics, go into those 3 games knowing that you can use similar things to slow down big man-oriented teams. That probably simplifies things a bit rather than really having to change stylistically who you're facing game by game. So I see that as a commonality among these groups. I don't think that'll quite carry over to playing Slovenia or Germany, or Australia or Canada or Spain or Brazil or any of these other teams, Georgia, Latvia. But I think they maybe we'll see them get in a little bit of a rhythm, start to get a little bit more aggressive defensively, and put the hammer down on some of these teams. And then maybe not just rest for the second game, but if you can do on Friday what you did this past game, maybe you can just kind of rest the second half or at the very least the fourth quarter and, save those legs for the games that matter.
Definitely. We'll keep an eye on it, keep you guys updated as there's actual basketball with one of all of our favorite players going on right now. So we'll put a pin in that and come back to it next week sometime. But right now, Tim, we're going to move on to the biggest threats in the West. Now, what we're going to try and do is we have plenty of time to go over training camp. We've already talked, we talk Lakers. Let's kind of frame this team, and the rest of the West around it, because I think we can be as high as the Lakers as we want, and if we don't have that right context, we were talking on stream for that rewatch of that 2008 first round, and it was crazy. The first seed had 57 wins, and the 8th seed had 50 wins. Now, I don't know if they're going to be that close. And that was an outlier year, right? Like, I think the Suns missed the playoffs with 48 wins, but the West is better than it was last year, I think. And at the top, especially. And even the teams kind of, vying for that maybe back into the playoffs play in, I feel better about. Now, there are going to be teams today that we don't maybe talk about that I still think are good teams. And you have to play your cards right, make sure you stay healthy and do your job to beat them in the playoffs. But a good place to start is with the defending champions, right? The Nuggets, they're favorites, as you can see here on every sports book. So I guess starting with them, Tim, what about their offseason? I can go over some of their additions, subtractions. They lost Bruce Brown was a big one. They also lost Thomas Bryant, Jeff Green. So they've moved around some pieces on the edges without adding a ton outside of that. So I guess, does any of their offseason kind of reframe where they were from last season to now?
I think they were far enough ahead of the other teams that you have to give them some benefit of the doubt. They've got the MVP. What I see with their offseason is more of them heading back towards the pack instead of furthering themselves, which is good news for the Lakers, but they are absolutely still going to be a contender in the West and likely the favorite in the West, is a favorite for the 1 seed. Shouldn't be surprised by that. And they did lose Bruce Brown. His son, Christian Brown, will step in and fill in for that spot. Jamal Murray, maybe he'll have another hot shooting playoffs. You never know. He was a good player in the regular season, like a very good player in the regular season. He was like insane from a shot making standpoint in the playoffs. But you can absolutely see a scenario where Jokic continues to be dominant. Christian Brown steps in for not his father, Bruce Brown. Murray's good, and maybe some of their depth pieces step up a bit. But this could be a very top heavy but still dominant team that is really, really difficult to play against because of their post game, their pick and roll offense. They can score with their bigs, with their guards. They've got that physicality element. The Gordon Jokic front court is so hard to deal with. Michael Porter Jr., he's large at the 3. It's not that he's like a big ISO guy, but it's just you need size to contest his threes. And that impacts how other teams have to build lineups, which can be a challenge for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I think them adding on the edges, they really didn't have. They got Justin Holiday. They had their Julian Strother pick, a couple other guys on the fringes. They lost some serious talent and versatility, I think. Even though Jeff Green is maybe play a lot of minutes, I think he's a valuable kind of guy. Thomas Bryant is, whatever, didn't matter as much. But I think, another year on him, maybe not just Jokic getting older. I think he's fine. He's not worried about that. But does Michael Porter's back flare up, right? Does Jamal Murray, kind of equalize next playoffs? So those things, I still think the Nuggets are the rightful favorite as they are, depicted on this list. But I think with the Lakers additions and, another year stronger, I think they're closer than the sweep we saw in the last playoffs. Do you think so as well?
Absolutely. And I think they play, and we've spoken about this a couple of times. They played Denver closer than a sweep. They came out on the wrong end of 4 games in a row. They had some shooting luck on both ends of the court go against them. And, a sweep's a sweep. But you don't leave that saying, man, we're, light years away from this team. You're closer than that. And the Lakers getting a little stronger and having chemistry and being healthy, and Denver losing some of that depth and maybe some guys not having nearly as crazy shot-making stretches does make this very, very competitive. So I think the Lakers do have a shot against this team. The depth for them is just so much worse. Well, not so much, but like they were 7 deep last year. Now they're 6 deep or 5 deep. Like they don't have depth. There's no margin for error here. This is a team that if they get an injury in the playoffs, they're in big trouble. If they get an injury in the regular season, they're in big trouble, and they might end up as a really, really, really good 4 seed because Jokic was out 20 games or something like that, but now he's healthy. So they're a team that doesn't have a whole lot of margin for error from a health standpoint. And another element that I think this is truly a tricky question. I don't know that I have the answer, but Jamal Murray last regular season, like if you go pull up his B-ball index metrics, like he was good, but he wasn't elite. He wasn't top 5 like guard in the West elite, but he was that in the playoffs. And who will he be next year? Is he just a guy that year after year is like good in the regular season and then turns it on? Because that hasn't quite been the case, but we certainly have seen a couple playoffs where he's gone bananas. What he is and what he will be, I think, is a really, really big element for them, because if he next playoffs plays like he played this past regular season, I feel really good about the Lakers playing that team. The Lakers went against that matchup, did a lot of things that, were smart. Some tactical inches they took too long to find. Other ones they didn't do enough. But, like, they did a lot of things that made sense, and he just hit every shot regardless, it seemed like. So you feel like there has to be some sort of regression, right?
Maybe. I mean, they still have, for the most part, the same strengths that they did last year, right? Mm-hmm. Jokic in the post, not only as a scorer, but as a passer, brings a unique challenge that not a lot of NBA rosters can solve right now. Even with a good physical center, he's going to beat you with his mind. That dynamic guard pick and roll with different options of the guy like Gordon and his athleticism on offense and defense. And then, that 1-2 punch with Jokic Murray with the good shooting kind of pieces around them. Now, I do think that, the shorter bench will hurt them. And I guess let's frame it this way. Do you think they'll end the regular season as the 1 seed in the West again?
I will say no. I think there's so little margin for error. I think when healthy, they could absolutely play like a 1 seed, but they're going to get nicked up at some point. And I don't see this team being like near 1 seed level if they do get nicked up, just because they're lacking depth.
And they could be, defending champs. They're going to be feeling themselves. They might not feel like they need to. They might want to play more. Jokic got his MVP. I'm sure Murray's going to try to get an all-star berth for once. That's a big thing. I think a lot of Denver, media and fans think that he's an all-star. So, I'm not going to clip this and send it to them for your, thoughts on Jamal Murray. But maybe I will, No, I'm kidding. But I think he's a good player. I think he is a little chip on his shoulder in that sense, at least on an individual level. So, what does that look like? How does that change chemistry? It's another year if things don't start to go their way. It could, it's just a few games here and there moves you from 1 to 3. I'm not saying they're going to be like a 6 seed or anything. I think they're top 4 guaranteed probably.
Yeah, they'll still be very good. Don't get us wrong, but they had a really special run last year, and for a team that just won the title, it wouldn't be surprising for them to start next season a little bit lethargic. And on top of that, if they do have any injury troubles, it doesn't bode well for them. So, but they're still a very good team. They're going to be good. I guess the last question with them is, what's your left con for this matchup? To remind the good folks in the audience, our left con is our Lakers version of the military's DEF CON, which is your readiness scale. How worried are we? It goes from 1 to 5, but 5 is we feel really good. 1 is we're very, very worried. From a 5 to 1, where would you put yourself for this matchup?
I think I'm probably at a 2. I could see, if they don't bring in a big, I think, who can work with them. They found some things with Rui on Jokic. I don't know about the sustainability about that long term, to be perfectly honest with you. But not a lot of people have an answer for them on the defensive end in that respect. So the Lakers getting better on offense, having a better, versatility in that respect, being deeper, gives them a better chance than getting swept. But I still think it would be a pretty tough matchup for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have them at a 2 as well. You have to give them some benefit of the doubt. This is a really, really good team, And if they make it to the playoffs healthy, they're going to be a really tough out and absolutely a title contender. There aren't a whole lot of teams built these days to stop a Nikola Jokic type of player. Maybe a decade ago there were, but a lot of teams have moved away from that style of, size and physicality. And that bodes well for a team that is big and is physical with him and Aaron Gordon in the front court, Michael Porter Jr. Like 3 through 5, they're a big, big team. And they're bringing back just about all their key players from last year, losing some depth, but still a tough group. And I would say one of the best coached groups in the NBA as well. I have a lot of respect for Mike Malone. I think he coached against the Lakers in the bubble better than Spo did. I thought that was the toughest schematic matchup that we broke down, that playoff run on the way to the Lakers winning. And he really, really brought it this past season as well in the playoffs. So they've got it on the court. They've got it on the sidelines. They've got the MVP. That's going to be a tough group to face.
All right, that's a good place to leave it for them, I think. I think a lot of people have come out of this offseason being pretty high on the Phoenix Suns. And, they're just barely trailing the Nuggets there in odds. A little bit, but not too much. So, obviously, they have a ridiculous, top 3 players. They got rid of Chris Paul, brought in Bradley Beal, got KD, at the trade deadline last year. Did some pretty good moving around the fringes, getting guys like Eric Gordon. They lost Jock Landale, Bismack Biyombo, Torrey Craig, Cam Payne, Landry Shamet, TJ Warren. They have a lot of turnover here. So this is going to be a significantly different group than we saw last year. But guys like Keita Bates-Diop, Yuta Watanabe, I thought they did pretty well there on the fringes, Tim. So I guess just in terms of their ins and outs, how do you feel about the reframe for the Suns?
I'm very high on them, and maybe I'm projecting them more towards like what I think they should be, and what they end up being might be a little different. But this is a group that has really, really good scoring. They should have much more team chemistry and be able to build out a real scheme, unlike last season where once they had those trades happen, they really dumbed things down and weren't operating with their full repertoire available. And that tangibly hurt them. Like, they were not the same machine of an offense last season like they were the prior year. And they've retained their offensive coordinator, Kevin Young, who longtime listeners will, I'm high on him. I was high on him as a head coaching candidate. And I think at some point soon he will get that opportunity. He, in our optimization database at B-Ball Index, when we look at what player, offensive impact did look like versus what we project it to look like based on player skills, he has optimized offenses better than just about anyone in our entire database. And Frank Vogel has optimized defenses better than just about anybody in our entire database. And if you were to put those two guys together, they would grade out a number 1 coach in the NBA. So we'll have to see, can you be really good on both ends at the same time from a scheme standpoint? But they certainly have the mind. They have the minds in the building, and they've got all of the self-creation talent you could want with Bradley Beal, KD, Devin Booker. If you have, this to me, I think is really interesting. You can have an excellent wing stopper and an excellent point of attack defender. Most teams don't have both of those, but you could have both of those. And then you might have another guy, and they're going to have an elite ISO option to go against that guy because you can't hide anybody. There's nowhere to hide anyone. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of teams to defend against, just as is. On top of that, throw in some good scheme. And then I think DeAndre Ayton, a big question for them. And I think, thinking of what they could be, if Ayton looks like Ayton, like if he looks like himself again, that changes things for them as well. Like, he can't play. Last season, he was not good. Before that, like, we saw him in a deep playoff run be one of the most versatile big men from a coverage and a positional standpoint defensively. He was finishing really well. He was taking on tough matchups. Like, he proved himself. I looked at that run. I looked at the data from that run, the film from that run, and I said, this guy's legit. He got a big bag, and he had a really bad season last season. And I think Frank Vogel coming in is someone that can much better leverage the skill sets he has available. It's a fresh start for him. and they decided not to trade him. And if they wanted to trade him, they should have done so, because now they're very, very limited because of that second apron. And so I think this group's kind of locked in. But if Ayton can be himself again, along with Beal, KD, and Booker, along with all the guys you talked about, like Yuta Watanabe, Goodwin's pretty good. Not a lot of people know about him. Jordan Goodwin's like a solid backup point guard. They got Bol. There's some upside there. Keita Bates-Diop, we talked about him during the offseason as a potential free agent option for the Lakers. Drew Eubanks, a solid big man. Josh Okogie, like they've got a ton of value role players along with studs and the coaching to go with it. So this is a team I think is going to be really, really damn good.
It's hard to look at a team with that top end talent and not think that they're going to be good. However, I feel like I'm a little bit lower on them than you are. And I think that comes from me with Kevin Durant is going to be 35 years old in a month at the end of September. He's already shown over the last few years to be fairly injury prone. Now, if they took Kevin Durant off this team, this is still a really good team. And to your point, you still have a lot of problems with defending two guys like Booker and Beal. And these are different guys, but that small stretch we saw of Brooklyn with Harden, Kyrie, and KD, they were really, really good. And for them, it was, obviously Kyrie and Harden are different, unique challenges. But I could see a scenario where, DeAndre Ayton got a bag, but he's still feeling a little malcontent. He's feeling a little not great about being the defensive anchor rebounder guy of this group. And, or they go through injuries. And even best case scenario, I think it's going to take a little bit of time, which these guys are fine with. They're going to feel it out through November, December, January, try to get to where they want to be by May. But I still can see a little bit more areas where it could fall in different ways than we expect, just because of how talented the top group is. Now, I'm not just saying, basing it all off injury. It's just a different dynamic bringing with the leadership and Kevin Durant. I'm just curious. And in a perfect world, you combine Frank Vogel and Kevin Young. But in execution, does that work? Does that happen? Right? It's still people involved. And so maybe I'm crazy, and I still obviously think they're going to be a very good team. But I can just see more avenues where this could fall apart a little bit, and they end up like a 3 seed, playing against a pretty good, 6 seed, or not losing in the first round, but still just having more challenges maybe than we think.
That's possible. I think this group, thankfully for them, doesn't have any of those unique personalities. KD's his own animal, but not in a way that I worry about him derailing their season like you do with Harden or with Kyrie.
Just with injuries.
With injuries, yeah. Yeah, with him, yeah. Booker, I've got no concerns with. Beal, I'm not concerned with. These guys, you can point at defense and yeah, I could see it. I think you can make the case if one of these guys gets injured, this is still a really good team, maybe not a title contender. If one of Denver's key guys gets injured, they're not a title contender. If one of the Lakers' key guys gets injured, they're probably not a title contender, depending on who it is, or a contender to win the West, depending on who it is. But if healthy, no one's going to want to play them. They got a massive upgrade adding Bradley Beal from a penetration, attacking the rim standpoint, the second level scoring for this group, the self-creation ability. If you have a weak defender anywhere, they're probably going to be able to go at that guy. And they're, when these guys are hot, it's a lot of there's nothing we can do about this mindset as a defense. And they've got 3 of those guys on this team right now. So that to me looks good.
It is okay, but what is that? There's nothing we can do about that on defense look like for them. Are they going to have? There's nothing we can do about that defensive opportunities.
You mean in terms of their defense being bad?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be their biggest challenge. This to me is a really good off. So I think I see 2 big potential holes here. Well, or 3, I'll say. if Ayton plays like he did last year, that really, really hurts because you're spending a lot of money on a guy who was not impactful. If he can be himself, that's really helpful. The other thing is they don't have a true point guard. Devin Booker's not a point guard. Bradley Beal's not a point guard.
Right.
These guys can play with the ball in their hands. They can run offense. They don't have a Chris Paul anymore. So it's just a little bit different in terms of how you run your offense, I think, potentially. Especially Kevin Young, heavy ball screen guy. We'll see what that ends up looking like. How do you how do you use Beal and Booker together in a play? It's really challenging to see. If you use Beal and KD or Booker and KD, defenses probably switch. And, they're okay with attacking, via ISO against switching. But what do they run? I think is an open challenge because this isn't a normally constructed roster from a skill distribution standpoint. In some ways, it's really, really strong. In other areas, they're a little weak. So I see that as a challenge. And then also defensively, what do things look like? If we look at the defensive roles for these guys, KD actually had a really good season as a helper. He was an off-ball, secondary rim protector. Did a really, really good job. The most effective rim protector among helpers last season. Devin Booker, chaser. Bradley Beal was in a helper role. He was not someone that was at the point of attack. So you're going to need defenders around these guys. And I think you have some of those guys on the roster, but
Booker was really good on defense in the playoffs last year. I'll give him that.
So, yeah, he did turn it up a notch. That's a good point.
Being able to use that energy bar in a different way, not having to be that offensive, ISO guy all the time, secondary creating, might help him, move that defensive role into something that they can be more sustainable with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I think we've covered, what they could look like. We've covered the strengths, the question marks. How did the Lakers match up, right? I think to me, perimeter defense would be a concern. There's nowhere to hide anybody. D'Lo's going to need to guard. Bron's going to need to guard. You can't just rest on defense against these guys because they've got the guns with three of these players to just go at you if you're trying to take possessions off, or even if you're not trying to take possessions off.
Well, something that I think the Suns had problems with, I think last playoffs as well, with Paul and Booker, was getting to the rim. I know Kevin Durant's not gotten to the rim nearly as much. So this team, not to say they're going to live and die by the three, they're going to be a great three-point shooting team, I think. But can you force them into some of those more mid-range shots? Those are high-efficiency guys in those areas, but still, less, just getting one possession, not giving up offensive rebounds, being able to take advantage of Ayton on defense. I'm curious how the roles for these guys do shift because offensively they should be great, but can a good defense still kind of make them uncomfortable and make some other guys, they make Eric Gordon make more shots, the Yuta Watanabes, the Bol Bols, the other guys take more of those shots. It's a tough ask when you have so much talent out there and you can swing, like I was saying, with the way the Brooklyn was set up. When you have effectively James Harden spotting up, if that's Bradley Beal, you're not going to leave him. There's going to be more space. Maybe they can get to the rim better. So I think there's still a lot of balls up in the air for that team.
Yeah, Beal's a good guy in terms of rim shot creation. He graded out the best among him, KD, Booker, and Chris Paul last season. Chris Paul was around average. KD was an F. Booker was an A-. Beal was an A, if I'm remembering what I just had up on the screen about 30 seconds ago correctly. So I think that helps, but I do think that's a fair point. That was something that, Chris Paul and Booker and KD, they were struggling to get to the rim. And that put a cap on what their offense was able to be. It was a lot of jump shooting. And if the jump shots weren't falling, things became problematic. I think Beal helps in that regard, but still, they don't have a true point guard. I think for me, defensively, they need Jordan Goodwin and Josh Okogie to play well because those are the two guys that I think can be point of attack defenders. They were point of attack defenders last season. Jordan Goodwin, he had a really solid season. B, O LeBron, A-, D LeBron as a secondary ball handler, point of attack defender for his roles on a bad Washington team only 24 years old, so his season age last year. He's not a guy that a lot of people are aware of. This could be a breakout year for him, but if he's nothing, like if he doesn't, on a bigger stage, this doesn't amount to much, they run into some problems. But I think he would be a key piece for them because he can be point of attack on defense, and on offense, he can be a point guard, and he has some really solid facilitation numbers. It's just, you don't need to score all that much, but just be out there, get the ball to your scorers, and be able to just kind of slot players correctly. So you don't need to have a shooting guard playing point guard, and then we don't have anybody at the point of attack. He could be important for them.
So if you had to put a lefcon on them, where would you rank it?
I think I am expecting them to be really good. I'd have them as a 1. This is a team that I'm really worried about because I just don't see how you're going to be able to defend well against what they have offensively. For the Lakers, I think, they match up well, but this is just such a difficult team to try to game plan against. Actually, I'm looking at his playmaking stats. Not as good when you compare to just guards. Really good passing efficiency, though. Jordan Goodwin. But I think they've done a really, really nice job. This is from a minimum contract standpoint, they did about as good as you could possibly do. And I believe in Ayton being better than he was last year. And I think the top end talent's there, and I trust the coaching. Maybe this crashes and burns and I look silly, but I think I'm more worried about them than I am about Denver right now.
I see that. I still think I'd probably put, with my concerns, I put them at a 2, where I'm concerned, but I could see a path. Obviously, I think the Lakers have more athleticism to match up with some of these guys. If they're able to, get some good defense out of Max Christie and some more wing, find that other wing guy that they can probably going to have to use Vanderbilt quite a bit in this matchup, which is a concern. If this matchups, if the team stays mostly the same. So there's still some concerns as far as how they match up individually. But yeah, I think Anthony Davis being able to roam around, protect the paint, forcing these guys to maybe some more jumpers, it maybe adds a little bit more variability in favor of the Lakers.
Yep. Why don't we, rapid fire through some of these other teams?
Yeah,
since we've
I
taken
think
a bit
those two,
here.
would you agree those two are the biggest threats to win the West? And I would even say my projection would be those Suns are the 1 seed.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with both statements. Those are the top 2 teams I'm worried about, and I'm more worried about the Suns in a 7-game series, and I'm also thinking in the regular season, I expect the Suns to finish as the highest seed. I like them as the 1 seed this year.
For sure. But yeah, let's move on to the Warriors. They are next in the odds, as you can see here. The Lakers did defeat them last playoffs, but they're a different team here as well. We had Poole gone. Hopefully, they're banking on better chemistry there, bringing Chris Paul in to shore up their non-Steph Curry minutes, which were disastrous the whole year. You got Wiggins back in rhythm. He had that long, lengthy absence he had dealt with. And then maybe they do finally hit on one of these young guys that they haven't been able to get, impact minutes from, like Kuminga, was that Jace Davis as their draft pick, Pajemski, I think is how you say it, right? And Moses Moody from a couple years ago. So is that their best path, or is it to expect kind of, everything's copacetic on the Steph, Clay, Draymond front? We think they're going to be more or less the same guys. And then, all those things I said will kind of lift them up, or do they have some concerns with their new roster?
I think they're going to be a tough out. And I understand why their odds are actually, what we're looking at right now, they're higher than the Lakers to win the West. Yep. And I think they should be about in that same tier. Like, Poole was not good last season. He was very bad in the playoffs. He had a good game here and there, but they're going to do better than that. Wiggins was not himself. And with those young guys, if I had to pick someone, I actually think the rookie, Trace Jackson Davis, is someone that might be able to come in right away and just be a solid switchable, good finishing, lob threat, really strong defense guy that can come in a very new role for him with the ball in his hands a lot less, but be strong. I I think Dario Saric is an underrated pickup for them because he's got some of the passing and the dribble handoff playmaking, but can also space the floor in a way that was a challenge for this Golden State team with their front court this past year. I think their big questions are like, how do you fit Chris Paul? Like, he doesn't really fit the scheme. So does the scheme change? Or is he just there to, as you mentioned, bolster the non-Steph like bench unit minutes? Is he like, if he's your sixth man, lead the bench captain? Okay, I could see it.
Right. Like, is their ceiling higher with Chris Paul in the closing lineup or without? I don't know. I feel like it's probably without.
Probably without. Like, defensively, I think it's tough to play that. I mean, Jordan Poole wasn't strong defensively either, but offensively, Poole and Steph make sense more together and then also within their scheme. Paul doesn't. I mean, Chris Paul's not going to be running around like pin downs and flare screens. He just won't. If you look at like his movement data, he is an old man out there moving as little as he needs to. He's going to be on ball, running ball screens and facilitating, or standing there while everybody else runs around in circles. So we've got, I don't know, man. The fit I'm a little worried about, but you got to do better than Poole did last season. 2 years ago, Poole was fantastic. I don't know if they're going to be quite that good, but that was the title team. So I think just with a better chemistry, they're going to be a better team. I do like how the Lakers match up, though. Like, Ham clearly has a great game plan. The Lakers still have the personnel to slow down the off-screen and the handoff attacks. I'm a little worried, though. Like, Golden State still had the Lakers on the ropes a bit. If they hit their threes a little bit better, they may have won that series last year. And, like, from a shot quality battle, game by game, they did pretty well. So it's not like they were all that far off from making it to the Western Conference Finals. And so I think if they're just a little bit better, they've got a really, really darn good shot. So this is absolutely a Western Conference contender. But compared to those other two teams we talked about, I still feel better just because of how well the Lakers have game plan against them and how I see that carrying over.
So like a 3 in LefCon, I think that's probably where I would put it. I could definitely see that upgraded to a 2 just because Steph Curry, Draymond, there's a lot of just, again, championship equity there that they're a tough out no matter what you get.
Yeah, I think a 3 is appropriate. It's not, I don't feel great about it, but I'm not, shaking in my boots about it. It's around in the middle. And I think that makes sense for right now. Now, if they can prove to us that the scheme has really adapted and things are working really well and there's more upside with Paul and Steph playing together, I might upgrade that concern. But for now, I think 3 makes sense.
All right, moving on to the other team in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Clippers. They didn't have much moves on the ins and outs. They lost Eric Gordon, and they picked up KJ Martin. And, yeah, that's about it. They kept the other guys. The Plumlee re-signed Russell Westbrook. And I'm going to be honest with you, Tim. Maybe it's me more giving too much thought of the Kawhi and PG can't stay healthy into May. But this team with Russ getting a little bit older, them losing a little bit of their depth, I kind of don't see it as much with them. And, they're close there. They're right there with the Lakers, a little bit longer odds. But I don't know, man. I feel like the Clippers they're going to be a tough team, but I still think they're beatable to me.
Yeah, I think it would be disrespectful if we didn't include them on this list, but I'm glad they are on this list so I can't disrespect them. These guys are a bunch of losers. This is not going to work, dude. These guys can't stay healthy for 10 games, let alone 82, and then needing to win 16 games.
Let alone 16,
these guys, man. Are you kidding me? If Robert Covington rocked last year and Ty Lue freaking benched him like the whole year. When Ty Lue stops benching good players and when they can prove that they can be healthy, then I'll have a little bit worried. Oh, wait, also they have Russell Westbrook. And we've seen how you can game plan against them. Like, on paper, yeah, okay, they could shoot threes. They've got some switchable guys. Zubats is a good drop defender. Kawhi can be that dude, or he was, half a decade ago. I don't know, man. Like, I'm not worried about these guys. I'm not worried about I want to play these losers. They can win regular season games. In a 7-game series, give me the Lakers. Bring it on, man. Screw these guys. Keep putting up billboards. We'll keep putting up banners.
I'm not going to lie, man. I could see them in the play-in. Like, obviously, like, injury, but like, I could see them in the play-in for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They've got much more of a floor than these other teams we've talked about. And I don't believe that they're going to be able to be healthy and then also coach well and then also fix the Russell Westbrook situation. It's a good situation for him. Like, he's got better spacing around him. Like, it made sense why he played well. And that was my analysis when he got moved over there. Like, yeah, this is a good fit for him. It's not, it's still a challenge for them as a team. So I don't know. The Lakers are going to need some wing stopper against this team to defend Kawhi. But other than that, matchup-wise, I'm not concerned. This is, from a LeFcon standpoint, I got these guys as a 4.
Oh, come on. If you have to all that, you got to make them a 5.
I'll make them a 5. I'll make them a 5. I'll make them a 5. We're going to go with that.
All right. Peer pressure works, folks. Moving on to another matchup the Lakers faced in the playoffs last year, the Memphis Grizzlies, who are, in line with the Mavs, and the Kings are really far. That's interesting. Seeing people not believe in them. Not saying I disagree, but it's interesting to see those odds so far away from the rest of the pack there. But yeah, obviously Ja's going to be suspended for the first 25 games. That'll affect their seeding, but they also lost 2 major pieces of their rotation in Dillon Brooks and Tyus Jones. And say what you want about Dillon Brooks, but he was a valuable player for them, and they haven't quite replaced his skill set, even though they added Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose and got Josh Christopher for free if he doesn't get cut. I still think there's some holes in this team, and outside of some, major development in maybe some more of Jaren Jackson or Desmond Bane and Santi Aldama and, getting Clark back and healthy and Adams, do you think that they are going to stay within that top 4 seeding in going into next season?
I think so. Oh, I don't know. I think the seeding might be a little lower for them just because of Ja being out so long. But once he's back, dude, this is a dangerous team. This is a legitimate, I think these guys could be really good. Ja's back. Let's say by the time he's back, the team has kind of figured out how to play basketball without him. So then their bench units are really good when he is back. And I mean, even the past couple of years, they've been good without him playing. So I don't think that'll necessarily be a huge challenge, although a lot of that was Tyus Jones, basically. So can Marcus Smart get in there and do well? He is legitimately a downgrade in some areas defensively, an upgrade in others. From a playmaking standpoint, I'd say he's a step up from Brooks. The perimeter shooting for both of those guys is a concern, but I think just the detriment to the offense, doesn't understand he's not a good shooter, thing. We are in a better spot with Marcus Smart than you are with Dillon Brooks. So I don't mind it. And once you get Ja back, I think you're in pretty good shape. You now have the last 2 defensive players of the year on your team. Luke Kennard, his shooting, Bane's shooting, that was problematic. That was tough for the Lakers. They were in trouble that series against Memphis. And then Luke Kennard got hurt, and it was okay, we don't actually have to solve this tactical problem we didn't solve yet. We were bailed out. So they could have pushed LA more if he was healthy. And to me, that's problematic. Ja getting back and then them having Marcus Smart, that's concerning. This is a young roster that's going to get better as they age. They have 14 rostered players that are 25 years old or younger. They are going to be better. And then if you add in Steven Adams and then Clark as well, Brandon Clark, those are 2 key guys that they did not have last playoff run. They had to go to their depth, and their depth still did damn good. If they go get those guys back, there aren't holes in a lot of this roster. And to me, that's I see this as being a tough team to play. Now, if you can still slow the Ja pick and roll, their offense is going to struggle. And to be frank, the Lakers coach circles around them. If they're going to get out coached, that's going to make them an easier team to play. And if Ja can't hit jumpers or hit pull-up threes, that's going to be challenging for them. But this is a tougher team. This would be a tougher team if you face them in the playoffs and they're healthy than what LA saw last time around.
I really enjoy watching Ja Morant play, and I can't help but have that feeling I had when watching prime Derrick Rose, when he's throwing his body into places it shouldn't be at very high velocities, that he's just going to he has a higher chance to get hurt and twist an ankle coming down. Somebody undercuts you and you break your wrist again. Again, no one can project injuries, but there are players who play in certain ways that give them a higher chance of these things. And I think Ja Morant lands in that. Now, maybe he adjusts his game. Maybe he's, trying to stay a little bit more conservative and in that respect. But that's a concern I still have about them. And without Ja, I think this team becomes just a solid end of the top 8 playoff team.
I think one thing that will help is he can't throw his body at defenders for a good portion of the season because he won't be playing. They've effectively have him in bubble wrap for quite a bit, and then we'll be able to unleash it later in the season. And I mean, he was only, he started last season at 23 years old. He's going to start this upcoming season at 24 years old. Still a young guy, should recover fairly well. Was 4th in the NBA in rim shot creation from a rim shot making, was graded out fairly well. He's up there somewhere. He's going to be good. This is a really good team. They're still a young team. They are going to have a lot of this isn't a window team where it's okay, they got to get it done this year or next year. They have quite a large window, I think, because of who they have and the ages of those players. But they're going to be in a tough spot. I say that they would be a 3 for me, along with the Warriors from a left con standpoint. I would much rather face the Clippers than the Grizzlies. What about you?
I for sure agree with that. I still think the Grizzlies are a strong team and, could definitely give a team a run for their money if healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that might count against them is withdraw out that much if things don't click right away. Maybe they are low in the standings and they have to play one of the best teams earlier in the playoffs, and that just makes their road to the conference finals tougher. But if they can get good seeding, they're going to be a tough out. Now, 2 teams we haven't talked about, Dallas and Sacramento. We actually see here on the odds, Dallas is ahead of Memphis. I'm not buying Dallas. I think they've got really, really, really good top-end talent, but to me, the roster just isn't at the level to win the West. And then with the Kings, their defense just has some major flaws. I love the offense, but I think the defense to me is not good enough to win that many 7-game series against all of these other teams that are really, really good.
Right.
But still really good teams that might be able to make it to the Western Conference Finals potentially. And then scrolling down a bit, the Pelicans, if healthy with Zion back, they could be challenging. Minnesota maybe could be challenging. OKC's going to be interesting. There are a lot of fun and good teams, but I think we're setting a high bar with we think you can actually win the conference finals. And honestly, maybe we take the Clippers out of this conversation. Right. But I think Nuggets, Suns, Warriors, Lakers, Grizzlies is, to me, for sure the top 5 in some order.
I agree with that mostly, but I think I would put Dallas in there, and I am much higher on them than you are. And it's surprising. They did really well for their limitations in the offseason. But, if you can get the full year of Kyrie, assuming, again, there's no funny business with Kyrie this year, which is a hard assumption to make. I'm really high on Dante Exum's comeback to the league. I think he's been playing really well from some of the film I saw overseas. Getting Seth Curry, getting that, they have 4 or 5 bigs now that they can play between Holmes. They got Lively. They still have Powell and Kleba. They have some versatility there. If they can get a little bit more out of a guy like Josh Green and maybe Omax Prosper, I don't know, man. I can really see them overperforming and just being scoring 125 points a night and giving up 123. But and Grant Williams, really good pickup.
He's their one big ad.
So I'm a lot higher than them, and then I think I would flip them with the Clippers in the standings, and obviously Luka and Kyrie at the top end talent is there, adding some defensive pieces, still having Tim Hardaway. So it's not a perfect matchup. It's not a perfect team, but considering where they started, at the end of last season, I think I land higher on them than you.
What do you think their closing lineup looks like? Like Luka, Kyrie, Grant Williams is in there,
and probably
Hardaway.
It's probably Hardaway because he can make threes. If Josh Green starts making threes, it's him.
And then Powell or Holmes.
Yeah. We'll see about Lively. A little bit of upside there.
I think their bench has a lot to prove. I think they need guys to step. I have more trust in the bench of a lot of the other teams than all of the other teams we talked about than some of these guys who need to step up. And I mean, some of them are high draft picks. Like they have opportunity. I'm not saying they can't do it, but they have a lot to prove, and maybe they'll prove me. It'd be great if they prove me wrong. I live in Dallas. It'd be fun to go see some more LA games. But I don't know, man. That's what I'm skeptical about. But I do certainly think the top end talent is there. Part of why, and to me, this is a general basketball thing. When you have your top two offensive options as point guard and point guard, or point guard and shooting guard, it's hard for those two guys to do stuff together. It's more like we need to attack in waves, like a Tatum and a Brown, than we're gonna run a pick like a Harden Embiid or a I don't know, name another point guard center duo or point guard power forward duo or shooting guard center duo. It's nice to be able to put your two best players in an action together. Whereas with this team, you can't quite do that. And in that way, I think that lowers the ceiling a little bit. But you do know at all 48 minutes, you're going to have an elite on ball, ISO guy, pick and roll guy on court between Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic.
I see where you're coming from. I think it's a little unique having a 6-7 point guard in Luka, where if you do a guard screen, he's going to have a wing stopper on him most likely, right? He's not going to just have a point guard on him. So if they do want to switch, you're going to get a mismatch, put him in the post against him. Okay. Let's say they run a normal 1-5 pick and roll with a Dwight Powell and his verticality. If you have Kyrie in the corner or in the opposite wing and he can catch with an advantage, dude, that's buckets.
Yeah.
So
and they got some lob threats on this team, which is nice.
Yeah.
Okay, you sell me a little bit. I'll see what things are starting to look like. To me, really, it's I need to get more comfort with some of their bench guys. But if that's there, then I can start to see it.
Little Dante Exum scoring, burst off the bench, throwing lobs up to Lively and Powell. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not calling them to be a top 4 seed. If they were, Tim, it would not shock me. Seth Curry spacing out.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing is going to be, can they defend at any high level? Which is probably no. But can they defend just enough?
Yeah, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Them and Sacramento, I think the defense is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Memphis, defense is going to be solid. Lakers, defense should be good. Warriors, defense should be good. Suns, the roster isn't solid defensively, but the coaching is, and they have some good roster pieces defensively. So I think they'll be average to above average. Nuggets, same sort of deal. But I really like the coaching for each of those groups. I think that can elevate a bit. So I don't know. Lots for teams to figure out, and then this group may evolve over time. But I think that's a good place to close this one out, Tom. These have been the contenders in the West, and we haven't talked about the Lakers. But folks, we're going to be talking about
that every day.
Yeah, that's nothing new.
It'll be interesting to kind of get a little bit more context for the rest of the leagues when we do start seeing these games, knowing the good teams, the bad teams, kind of just, priming y'all for the season to come.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. So we'll continue the conversation. Check us out on Discord. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can get into the Discord for free. You can DM that to me, to Tom, to the Lakers Exceptionalism Podcast Twitter account. Join the Discord. Lots of different tiers with cool stuff in there. Bonus pods, X's and O's content. Go check it out. Go check out the link in my bio to see what that looks like. I want to shout out Court Prowse and TJ Timotagi at the arena sponsorship tier. Zach Harris, Q Daddio, iPod Shuffle, Miguel T. Shuttleworth, Omar, Roy, Abdul Rahman, Keneal Mason, Doppel, and Romario in the owner's box, as well as to the courtside and lower bowl crews. All those different levels have different cool extra things that you can get access to. Go check that out. Go, if you're listening live in playback.tv/Lakers Watch Party, click on that link in the chat to the YouTube. Go subscribe. It really helps us out. You're going to see a lot more content coming up there in the future. Tom just rolled out a cool new snazzy logo, and I'm excited about that. My dilemma now is, do I change my Twitter logo to my bio picture?
That's all you, brother. That's up to you, man.
Because one thing I do, like, I like the new one more. However, I now like how when I tweet at the pod account, it doesn't look like I'm tweeting at myself, which is nice.
Well, you know what? Let's hook up. Maybe we can get you like. Do you know what a VTuber is, Tim? It's like an animated. We're just gonna build you a VTuber, so you have like a thing people can see and react to. I'm totally kidding, but that would be funny if you had like a little anime waifu girl. Yeah.
Tune in to, and if you're listening to this pod right now, you'd be seeing my anime girl right now on playback.tv/Lakers Watch Party, and you can't prove that I'm not. So go check us out there. We got a lot of fun stuff ahead. We've been doing Lakers rewatch parties, which has been a blast. This week we did. What did we see this week? Oh, Lakers Nuggets. Nuggets 2008. AI, Melo going off, Kobe going off a little bit more. George Karl not calling the play all game. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Nightgown jerseys.
Yeah, dude, nightgown jerseys. If you don't know about it, you need to go learn.
Well, thanks everybody. That's a good place to leave it. Go sub to our YouTube, and we'll talk to you all next time.